Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our health seminars, Discovering Health Together, here in the Irish Mission. And thank you so much to everyone who has been showing up all these weeks. We really appreciate you being here. We appreciate all the support that you've been giving. And thank you to Shane, who's our resident DJ, who makes sure that everything is working well every single Wednesday, and ensures that our technology is doing what it's supposed to do. So we're grateful for that. And I was sharing earlier on off screen or off camera that we had so many positive feedbacks. We're getting a lot of feedback about people taking steps to change their health consequent of all these presentations that have been happening since the first week. So we're very glad about that, and we want to encourage you to start today. Don't start next Monday, don't start next Wednesday, don't put it off for the beginning of the month or next year's New Year's resolution, but start today to make changes and take steps to improving your health and taking charge of every aspect of health that you can. And I know that God will do the rest for us. And today we're going to be sharing, I'm standing in for Pastor Greg Davis, who was not able to be here today. And so I'll be speaking on how we can face storms with calm, how we can face the storms of life with calm. This actually happens to be probably one of my favorite topics: stress, coping with it, dealing with it, and also thriving from it. And I really believe that this is what I believe is that we can not just cope, we can not just deal and manage, and I don't like to use the word stress management anymore, but we can actually thrive from what is happening in our lives. Even the storms that come to us can help us to grow and to become better individuals, and not just physically and not just mentally, but even physically as well. We have the capacity. So this is what we're going to be talking about and sharing today. And we're going to be looking at how we can best do this. So if you go on to the next slide, and I think it's just the next one. Yes, ever had. Okay, that's fine. If you leave me there. So has any of us ever had moments, have we ever had moments when we felt overwhelmed, when we felt that there was a lot going on in our lives at the same time? I know that at every point in life, there's someone who say this, that we're either coming to a storm, going through one, or just come out of one. And that's life, really. Life is that. It's a series of crises and challenges that we're learning to deal with, that we're having to find resources within ourselves or outside of ourselves to manage. And for the majority of us, and I think it was an admiral, I can't remember his name, an admiral in the Second World War, who said the only person that doesn't experience stress is one who is not alive. Only when you're not alive will you not experience stress. And this is true for every single person, whatever your walk in life, whatever your station in life. There is a time in all of our experiences, in all of our lives, where we experience stress and sometimes overload. Now, what is overload? Overload is when there's a lot, or we perceive, I'm going to use that word quite a lot in this presentation, where we have a perception that what we're experiencing is more than we can take, where we have a perception. So if you move on to the next slide, it's a time when we may feel that we are going through more than what we would want. So yes, how are we going to recognize our own symptoms of stress? So the first step in controlling our stress is awareness, being aware of what it is that stresses you, what it is that makes you anxious, what it is that has a tendency to make you anxious. And I'm going to be using relative terms. And the reason why I choose to use relative terms is actually because of the fact that not everybody experiences stress the same way. And not everything that you might experience as stress is experienced as stress for another person. So for example, some people have challenges. Some people like writing exams, and they wait, and they can't wait for that moment when they're writing an exam. There's some people who like to run the marathon. Anyone here who runs the marathon? Hands up if you do. If you're one of those people who would say, yes, I would do a 5K, or I'm going to do a 10K. Now, that I consider stress. Running the marathon for me is stressful. And let me tell you, when I investigated why, because I like numbers and random things, I investigated the fact that a marathon is 26.2 miles. And for me, it really boggles my mind why you'd want to add an extra 2 miles, 0.2 to the 26 that are already there, because 26 is a lot that people have to run anyway. But somebody actually decided that they would add that 0.2 to make life just a little bit more exciting for those that think marathons are exciting and that they're not stressed. But I discovered where that came from, and it has to do with a battle that was fought by the Greeks and the Medes, or the Medo-Persians at some point, and somebody had to run. And when they ran to announce the news or something, it was 26.2 miles. And that's where that came from. It came from the Greeks and a war or a battle that was fought between the Greeks and the Medo-Persians. So very interesting little fact. But for me, what I find is that often what we may perceive as stressful, and so I might come to Shane and I'll say, oh, Shane, I'm being stressed by this, and he might not be able to relate. So a lot of the times it's relative to our circumstances, it's relative to the things that are happening in our lives even at that time. It may be relative to what else is happening in our lives and our coping skills, what we are able to do and how we've been able to manage stress in the past. So this is very important. So when we talk about stress and coping with things and challenges in life, it's not always going to be the same for everyone. And I never want to minimize what anyone is experiencing, because I know that rain can be stressful for another person. But in Africa, when it's been dry and there's been a drought season, rain can be a joy for someone else. But it's important for us to be aware of what in particular causes us stress. The second thing is that when symptoms persist, this becomes a problem. So we say that stress is okay. Stress is necessary to get us alive, to get us to even meet challenges of life. But when it becomes a problem is when it is persisting and when the symptoms are persisting. So it's very important for us to be able to manage that. And what I always encourage people is this. I always encourage people to note how their body reacts, to know how you feel when you're experiencing stuff, when you're experiencing challenges. So, because we're all different, I know that my body reacts in a particular way. So, for example, when I hear bad news, my stomach turns. I have an experience that happens in my gut. And that's why the gut is used a lot. When people talk about, my gut instinct, I didn't feel right in my stomach because there was something just amiss. The gut is actually an instinct. It's an organ that is lots of nerve endings that also produces our feel-good hormones. And so it actually does respond to what is going on. We call it our second brain. In fact, in a lot of places, it's called the first brain. Is it actually senses when things are not right because of that fact that it has intelligence. It has, not artificial, but it has intelligence. So it knows when you're stressed. It knows when things are right, besides what we put in it. So that's very important for us to know what our own stress signals are. So for me, it's in my gut. For other people, it happens only, maybe they get a headache. Now, what I always encourage people is know the first signs of dealing with your storm. Know when it's in the early days. Don't wait until now you are frazzled and nothing is working anymore, you are now unwell, before you can actually start addressing. So what are the early signs for us, if you go on to the next slide for us, so that we can start to change the behavior? So we may experience changes in our body, in the physical. So we may experience muscle aches, headaches, rapid breathing. And the reason why all this happens is because we are going through what is called a sympathetic process, nervous system process. Your body has mechanisms to help you. So stress, fear, anxiety, all of those are geared to helping you to survive. They're for survival. They're not for you to, obviously, if it's too much, it becomes a problem and can actually damage you. But our reactions to what is happening in our lives, to the storms that are in our lives, are actually were created by the Creator, by God, to enable us to run away from danger, to protect us from things that are harm to us, and to help us to survive. So when we start to have those early, and by the time this slide is, some of the things on this slide are like your initial symptoms. So for example, rapid breathing, your heartbeat, and maybe you shaking or trembling. These are initial symptoms that might be showing you that there's something in your environment, whether physically, externally, or internally within yourself, that is causing you anxiety or fear or stress. When we start to get muscle aches, when we start to get headaches, and all these other things that are more long-term rather than medium-term, this is because we have already had too much time maybe with the stress or the storm in our life, or we have intense stress. Usually though, it's happening after a longer period. So in the initial, when something is happening, we might have an experience of our heart beating faster, because that's happening so you can get in more oxygen, so you can get more oxygen to the muscles, to the brain, so you can run, get away from the danger. You may also experience the dry mouth because your body is trying to take away unnecessary functions that you don't need. The knotted stomach, like I said earlier on, that's your stomach responding, telling you something's wrong. But also that happens because your body is trying to prioritize your muscles and your brain. Your heart is working harder. And in the long run, if we don't do something about these symptoms, they become the pain, the headaches, the muscle pains, even joint pains, fatigue, tiredness. If you go on to the next slide, please, Shane. All these things can result in us having more unable to sleep. We may lose interest in food, in sexual activity, in life, we may be overeating. We may also start indulging in things like drugs and alcohol, and have other behaviors that are ways of coping with long-term stress. Now, in the initial as well, when you're first experiencing your storm, you may struggle to sleep. But the longer this stays in your life, you may develop chronic sleep problems, insomnia, or you may even oversleep. Some people sleep too much when they're stressed. And the reason why they do that is because they're trying to run away. I'm not going to ask you to because I can't see you, but raise your hand wherever you are. If you're one of those people that just wants to hide away from your storms, that would like to just get away from everything and not face what's coming or what's happening in your life. Now, a lot of these behavioral reactions are actually part of withdrawing and hiding from the storm. So for example, when you do the drugs, if somebody does substance misuse, they're actually trying to hide away from their problems, find ways of just dulling the mind, and so that they don't cope or confront what's going on. Overeating as well is you're finding a distraction or a way of hiding away from the negative feelings that you may be having. So I use food as a way, not that I use food, but I'm just saying this as a person might use food to try and get away from the negative feelings that they may be experiencing, the unpleasant feelings that they may be experiencing, and try to dull that with food or with other behaviors, whether it's addictive behavior on the internet, or it even is addictive behavior in other ways. So this can be a way of trying to hide or run away from the storms that we are experiencing. And as we know that nothing changes by running away from it. Nothing will change. Your storms are not going to go away by you, especially if the stress is caused by something that we have some capacity, if not entire capacity, to deal with. And in which case we need to be addressing it rather than running away from it using the behaviors. Some people run away by, like I say, going to bed, just not getting out of their beds, deciding that they're not going to face the world. They're not going to face what's going on in their lives, and they're going to stay in the house or stay in the bed. And the longer we do those kind of behaviors, the harder it is to get out and face those things and face those challenges. So if you move on to the next slide, please, Shane. So emotionally, we may also experience different reactions, so nervousness, feelings of lack of self-worth, fear, anger, anxiety, depression. And these are more long-term effects of dealing with stress and facing the storms of life. If we have not dealt with the storms of life and the challenges that we are facing. So emotionally, we may experience some of these things. So if you're watching this When you're taking notes, you can write down for yourself and maybe take a moment and say, what have I experienced? Maybe even recently in the last 2 weeks. Maybe in the last time I was coping with a stressful situation or a storm in my life, what is it that I did, or how was I behaving? Was I overeating or not eating? Was I sleeping too much or not sleeping? Was I feeling panicky, getting anxious and talking to everybody, calling everyone, trying to help them to get them to help me? Was I getting irritable and angry with people around me and the situation? Did I feel like I was worthless because of this thing that I'm struggling with? Did I worry a lot, or was I feeling quite anxious? So, and sometimes when we are concerned about so many things, our memory is impacted as well as our concentration and attention. So we start to not be able to focus on what it is that we're doing. And that's when we find that maybe at work, we're not able to manage, or we're struggling with the tasks of work, we're struggling with the tasks that we may have in our business or in school, because our memory and our mind is on how do we deal with this. Now, I always want to encourage us to think about all of what's happening in the body. The body is amazing. The body tells you things. The body only tells you things so that you can do something about them. The body is not trying to punish you. All these things that are happening in you are not happening so that you can feel bad. They're actually happening so that you can address situations. And because sometimes we don't address those situations, like I said earlier, we run away, or we use distraction, or we're focusing on other things rather than what we're supposed to be doing with that storm. We then have these things carry on and carry on. But your body, your mind, your gut is trying to help you. Always think about that. Your body is your friend. Your mind is your friend. And any negative feelings that you experience, and I personally don't like to attach feelings of judgment to feelings. So worry is a thing. It happens. It's because maybe when I'm doing a certain thing, is it good or bad? Sometimes we do need to be thinking and concerned about a situation, and we need to deal with it. When we start to have inattention, your mind is like, I'm trying to help you focus and fix the problem. And so I can't focus on this thing right here that you want me to focus on. I need us to fix the problem, right? So think about that. Everything that's happening, God created the hormones and all the pathways in our bodies as a way to keep us, to help us survive, to thrive, and also to manage life. So when you think about it, you can logically and clinically look at the feelings and see what is the thought and what is the something that has happened. And that way it ceases to be frightening, because sometimes we're frightened by the feelings that we're experiencing. So if you move on to the next slide, if you go on to the next slide, please, Shane. Okay, so I've talked about thinking about how we behave. So what are the stresses? What are the things that stress me out? Make a list of these if you have. We don't have much time, but identify the major causes of stress and make a list of the stresses in your life. If you want to do that now, if you want to do it later, you can write down this heading: what stresses me? What is it that stresses me? And there's a reason why this is an important question, because we can literally filter, and later on we're going to do that. Should I be stressing about this? Is this worthy of my attention? And if it is, how much attention should I be giving to this storm? Is this a little tornado? If you've been in places where it gets very dry, in my country where I'm from Zimbabwe, and sometimes in the summer, you get these little tornadoes that come round. It's just wind and dust, and they blow. And we used to call them, in my language, it's vunguzani, but we understood that they just were coming and passing. We also understood that they were not going to cause much damage. They might throw a bit of sand in your eyes. They might just, cause you to be dusty and cause the veranda, what we call the porch in Zimbabwe, in Africa, it's called a veranda. So they cause the veranda to get dusty, because usually our porches have, they're sort of open, and people get annoyed with them. But we know that it's not a tornado. We know that it's not a hurricane. So we're not stressing about it. And I believe that when we can write things down and put, what is it that stresses me? What is it? And then we can look at it and say, is this a tornado? Is this a hurricane? Should I be so stressed about this? Or is this something that I can just choose my battles and not worry about this particular thing, not worry about this storm and stay calm? And that's why sometimes it's really good to see what's happening in my life. And here's an exercise I'm going to teach you, and I want to encourage you to do. Whenever, remember we talked about all the symptoms earlier on, about how we might feel in the gut, how we might start to have funny experiences, maybe in our bodies, or we may have inattention and we're losing focus. Here's something that you can do. Always stop. Take a deep breath. You breathe in. You can do that with me right now. You just breathe in and breathe out. And what you're doing is you're calming all those things. You're calming that process, the anxiety that's happening inside you, right? You're calming your hormones, your organs that are responsible for that stress response. And what you want to then do is then say, right, what is happening? What is my body trying to tell me? So you're focusing, you're being more mindful, and then identify what is it that could be stressing you. So maybe answer this question, what's stressing me right now? What could be the problem? And then once you have the time to actually do that in a calm way without panicking, then if you write it down while breathing in and breathing out, you can be able to say, right, by the way, actually, I have dealt with this, because the brain is interesting this way, because it's constantly trying to get us to problem solve. If it feels you haven't done it, it will cause all of what we talked about, or some of what we talked about, to happen. But you can say to the brain, literally talk to yourself and say, oh, by the way, I've actually dealt with this. We don't need to worry about this. Actually, we do like the rain. It's not a bad thing. The rain causes things to be green around here. That's nothing to worry about. Oh, in fact, so-and-so is coming to deal with this. The boiler, someone is coming to deal with this. So it allows you to focus on what it is that you practically, logically can be doing, and then to dismiss the little hurricanes and tornadoes and just sandstorms that may be coming, and say, this is nothing. I don't need to be stressing about this. This is not major. And so even if it is, what is happening? What can be done about it? So that's really important. Remember, we said how to face our storms with calmness and logic rather than emotional reasoning is what we're going to be talking about through this as we're doing this. So if you move on to the next slide, please. Yes, so there's good stress. We talked about some things not being good stress. If you go back to the previous slide, yeah. So they're good stresses. Thank you. They're things that, like getting married, you're gonna have so much going on, and it may be full of stress, but it's good because you're happy, right? Work promotion might mean you have more challenges. You're gonna be doing more, but it's good. Maybe you're making more money. Maybe it gives you more status. Maybe it helps you to feel more worthy, etc. Playing sport. Sport is challenging. I'm sure all those people that were playing the World Cup in December can tell you that it was very stressful before the event, before going on the pitch, and even winning required a lot of challenge. It required a lot of push, but it was good push. It was good stress. And being at the World Cup was probably good stress for a lot of people. So we can still enjoy some stressful things. Helping other people might require you stepping out of your comfort zone to do certain things, but it's okay. And it results in you being challenged, being motivated, feeling excited. It improves your performance. It increases your well-being. It helps you to thrive. And it's usually short term. So that's important. But when it's bad stress, and you can go to the next slide, please, Shane, when is it bad stress? When we don't want this kind of stress, where it's, examples of change that isn't healthy for us. So, for example, losing someone, losing a breakup in a relationship, having a bereavement, losing a job, right? Some personal examples of personal stresses like bereavement, life crisis, where you get to a point, maybe you've got a diagnosis that's causing you stress, that challenges you in a negative way. And sometimes the environment itself, we could be living in crowded places. We could be living in a place where we're always at risk. where there's danger all around us. So for example, if you live in a war-torn country, or you are living in a place where you are always threatened by storms, there are some places in the world when, and I'm not going to mention names lest some people take offense with me, but there's some places in the world where I said nobody should be living there. There's always a hurricane, there's always a huge storm, and houses get destroyed every summer. And you might know places like that where they're always building and rebuilding, because every single summer some hurricane, somebody within, they give the hurricanes names now, isn't it? And all the tornadoes, they have names, the big storms that come around. And people in those areas are always under threat of losing everything, and sometimes even losing their lives. So some places, some environments can be stressful. Criminal activity in those environments can also create a lot of stress within us. So go on to the next one. So go on to the next slide. Thank you. And I'm not going to go through all of that. So this part is the most important part, and then we'll probably end after the 12 points. And so the next one. So preventing stress is far better than trying to remove it. So this is the good stuff, right? So we're going to do these slides, and then we're probably going to end after we talked about the 12 ways that we can meet outcomes. Now, the first part really is about creating within ourselves the capacity to meet our storms. So I always say to people when I share about resilience and about endurance, we build capacity first before we go and run a marathon, right? You're not going to be, I would not go and run a marathon tomorrow or a 5K without preparation nutritionally, without preparation by practicing over and over again, and without preparing mentally for the event, for the stressful event, because it really is stressful. So what we want to be doing is, in order for us to meet the storms of life calmly, because they're always going to happen, we say that, there's always going to be something happening in our lives. We want to make sure that our bodies physically are able to meet the storms of life. So when things happen, our body will do what it does. It will send the right hormones to the right places to create that ability for us to withstand the challenges of life. We want to be able to do that. If you're sick, you're not going to be able to do that. If your body is compromised nutritionally, you are not going to be able to do that. And that's why we always say to people, those who are nutritionally well nourished are probably not going to have colds and flus as much. And we also know that those who are nutritionally well balanced are going to be able to manage the challenging times much longer as well, not just in terms of being able to deal with it, but for a longer season. So we want to eat smart. We want to choose a balanced, nutritious diet, have lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, because they contain the little nutrients that are important for the nervous system. Your B's, your vitamin B's, your B6, B12, all those nutrients, the vitamin B family, are important for the nervous system, for the brain. Your vitamin C is important for your immunity. Zinc, we know the importance of zinc in terms of boosting our immunity, as well as vitamin D. So all of eating all these healthy foods is going to improve that. And we know that people who eat junk and also do extremes of diets are probably limiting their ability to manage stress. So that's the first thing. Physically, we want to be ready for the storms. Number two, we want to go into the next one, exercise. We talked about exercise last week. So people used to ask me a lot when I worked in Ireland, and I worked in mental health services for 13 years over in Ireland in the health service in Portlaoise. And often my clients would say to me, is your solution to everything the same? Because it always seemed I started with food. With every single person that I worked with, I would always ask them, are you having breakfast? Are you eating well? What are you eating? Are you exercising? Are you drinking water? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you having your 5 a day? Because believe it or not, that is the foundation for total well-being, is our bodies and how they're functioning physically. So if I'm stressed, if I'm not exercising, when we exercise, we boost our mental capacity for managing stressful situations. We boost the production of serotonin in the stomach as well as in the brain. We boost the production of other endorphins and feel-good hormones. And those are the feel-good hormones are what enable us to experience stressful situations with more resilience, with more endurance, and with more joy. I dare say that we will have more joy in meeting life's challenges when our brain makes those challenges. For example, somebody who trains and exercises a lot, they enjoy going to the gym. And in fact, their body produces those endorphins when they're pushing themselves. So it is possible for us to experience a surge in those in adrenaline, a surge in endorphins, or the feel-good factor, when we experience stress. And that's why we can, of course, if it's not too much and if it's not for too long a time, we can actually have excitement writing exams or about to do something really challenging, because your body does create those feel-good hormones. It does that so that you can deal with the storm better rather than to go in the negative way. So go on to the next one. So we talked about exercise last week. We want to get our sleep, getting our beauty sleep, making sure that we get 7 to 8 hours. Do you know that this month is Sleep Month, World Sleep Month? And Paddy's Day happens to be World Sleep Day. So the 17th of March is World Sleep Day, and we're encouraging people over here in the South England. I've been sending messages to our health teams to encourage people to sleep, to have an accountability partner, to have somebody that helps them wake up and at a set time, and also go to bed at a set time. So let's encourage one another to do that. Sleep restores the mind, it restores the body. If you wake up feeling fresh and refreshed, you're more likely to deal with life stresses better. Has anyone ever heard of the word HOLT in relation to stress and managing life? The word HOLT. If you've heard of it, raise your hand. I may not be able to see you, but I need you to engage with me. Yes, HOLT. H for hunger. If you're hungry, you're not going to deal with stuff that's coming at you in the same manner. And hunger, not just as in I haven't eaten right now, but hunger as in your body is nutritionally hungry. If you're deprived of those necessary nutrients that help you to cope with stress, that help you to cope with life. So like I mentioned earlier, your omega-3 fats, your folic acid, your vitamin Bs, those create cravings in us. When we have a deficiency of those, that means our body's hungry for the necessary nutrients to help us to cope with stress and to manage life. So if you're hungry, you're not going to deal with life very well. You're going to be more irritable. You're going to be looking for those nutrients. Anytime you're feeling cravings or irritability, remember what I said, ask your body, what is it that you want? What is it that you're looking for? And in most cases, it's looking for you to nourish it. So if you're hungry, if you're angry, you're not going to deal with storms that are coming your way. Imagine when you're already angry and then you're at home and your child comes and does something. Maybe they spill water on the carpet or juice on your couch and so on. Already you are not in the right frame of mind. So you're not going to deal with what's going on around you in a good way. So you want to minimize that as well. So calm down, breathe, manage your irritability, manage anger. Remember what the Bible says, that do not go to bed angry. You're going to likely wake up angry or you won't sleep. So when we're angry, hungry, angry, when we're lonely, and we use that, the L, to imply to represent any times when our social life is not right, when we're alone, when we feel alone, when we perceive that when we're being neglected or we're neglecting friendships, that also reduces our capacity to manage life and to manage stress. And then when we're tired, so T is for tiredness. So when we're tired, and we're also not going to be able to manage the storms of life better. So we want to sleep and we want to exercise, we want to eat well. We want to also manage our anger and our emotions. If you go to the next slide, number 4, if you're writing this down, if you're someone who likes to make notes, do that. So take control of your life. One of the things or the factors that they found was that people who manage stress better have what are called 3 C's. 1, sense of control over life. Now, as Christians, we believe that we may not have everything under control. And in fact, it may be impossible to know what's happening in the next minute. But we know who has control of our lives and who is in control of what's going on. And if we trust God to be in charge of our life, rather than us, because we can never have everything under control. But when we trust God that everything is under his care and in his hand, we can feel more in control. Not that I am in control, but God is in control. So I know that nothing will happen in my life that is a surprise to God. It may be a surprise to me. And that sense of control, and in this case, God being in control and in charge of our life, gives us calmness when we face the storms. So having that sense, and we know it's the psychologists say, having control, having competence, having a sense of I can manage what's going on in my life. Oh, I've got a task that I have to deal with. I'm able to deal with that. I've got the skills. That helps as well. And then the last C, I always forget the last C. So the sense of control, a sense of competence and confidence in what's happening around me. So that within myself, that also helps as well. So we can learn to take charge and to have more control and more competence and more confidence in different situations. And that's important. That's why, for example, we learn to drive, and we practice and practice and practice, and repetition will give us more confidence. It gives us more competence and therefore more calmness when we're on the road. So we go on to the next stage as well, number 5. So having the sense of control, or giving God control of our lives, that's really important. So anticipating change, we cannot help change. It's one thing for sure. Some changes happen rather rapidly, and they may take us by surprise. Some changes happen with us knowing and probably us initiating those changes, but we must know that will always happen. So prepare for that. Prepare and expand your mind for those moments when you have to change, and don't get caught out in the usual rut. So anticipate change, even welcome it sometimes, because it's necessary that we not be around the same mountain for too long, because even God wants us to move and not be stagnant. And number 6, looking at what else we can do as we look at managing the storms. Laughter, humor. Solomon said, a cheerful heart doeth good like medicine, but a crushed spirit crushes the bones or dries out the bones. So having humor, laughing, humor is a great stress reliever. Look at the funny side of life. Look at the funny side of you. Don't take yourself too seriously. Sometimes we're too serious about life, about ourselves, and that can put a damper on things. And when things go wrong, sometimes we can look at them and say, right, oh, wow, you know what? That went wrong, but next time I'm going to learn, I'm going to laugh it off when necessary. I mean, I'm not encouraging us to laugh at everything, and some things are not. Laughing matters. But having a sense of humor is very, very important. And humor is healing. Do you know that 3 minutes of laughter, just 3 minutes of laughter, is worth 30 minutes of a relaxation exercise? Now, I was teaching you earlier on how to do deep breathing, to breathe in and to breathe out. And you can do that and do like a visualization and relaxation exercise for like 30 minutes. If you laugh for 3 minutes, you actually do your body better and more good than if I got you to sit here and do that for 30 minutes. So here's what I always recommend. Don't go a day without laughing. So here's what I do. I try to find something funny to laugh at. I try to find something funny on YouTube that I can laugh at. Maybe like the other night I was watching Pink Panther. Do you remember the cartoon Pink Panther? Pink Panther tried to sleep. I was talking to someone about sleep, and we were laughing at Pink Panther. He was an insomniac, and he was always trying to sleep. Right, and so things like that. It just, what can I say? Innocent fun. I like watching Only Fools and Horses or Mrs. Bouquet. Keeping up appearances. I might watch maybe half an episode or even an episode of that. 30 minutes of laughter, proper innocent laughter, clean laughter. You need that. I encourage it every single day. If you can do that, it will really boost your internal organs. It will help you to relax and promote health. Number 7, the 7th way that we can help ourselves to meet life storms and stay calm internally, talking about things. Learn to talk to others when you are going through challenging times. We encourage people, if you can, if you have a friend, if you have a family member, if you're someone that you trust, that you can share with, that you can talk to, it's really, really important. A problem that is shared usually makes it easier. It doesn't half it, but it helps you see it in a better light. Sometimes it helps you find solutions. Someone else talking to you about something may help you to see a solution that you didn't see yourself. Or they can help you see that, oh, actually, things are not as bad. So it's very important that we find a confidant, someone that we can share with. Have someone that you are close enough. And if you don't, or if you can't trust the people around you, finding a therapeutic relationship professionally can be a helpful thing for you. And I highly recommend it. So it's important not to bottle up our frustrations, our fears, and our anxieties. Number 8, as we go through this, learn to relax. Learn to relax. So important. Whether it's gardening that helps you relax, or it's cooking, baking, the smell of baking in the house, so good for your senses. The smell of food, good food, walking on grass barefoot in the summer. Wonderful experience. While you're feeding your senses with all these experiences that really help your body to tune away from your stresses and more, and get you in touch with life, with nature. Go out and walk in nature. Breathe in the smell of the wood, the trees, and listen to the birds as they sing. And do that as often as you can. Play your favorite music, have a warm bath, and get a massage. You know, most mornings we're rushing, right? We shower quickly. We don't take time to actually enjoy that experience. And one of the things that I love about bathing, which you can do with a shower as well, is just while you're there, just picture all your stresses going away under that shower. Just wash away all your stresses. You know, there's a wonderful reason why God uses water a lot as a metaphor for washing away, for removing sin, because water is healing. Water does a wonderful thing. Even when you're drinking water, I encourage mindfulness a lot in terms of just taking the time to be where you are, to enjoy what you're doing, enjoy water, the drinking of water. It's such a wonderful experience. If you've been thirsty and been in a desert place where they had no water, you will understand why water is a gift and why it's a wonderful thing. Or just being on your own and quiet, taking that moment to release and let go and let God take care of the things that may be worrying you, and letting the storm pass by. Let the storm go over you. Like I said, some storms don't need to come and shake your world. They can just pass you by. And storms, you often come with water, but water, remember, can clean, can remove dirt, and can actually revive and refresh. So take the time to relax. Number 9, what we want to do as well that can be helpful for us is take time to play. We talked about laughter. Have friends around. Have recreation. It's so important. I know how important this is. I'm one of those people that likes to work, but I also love to play, to go on holiday, to find a hobby or a leisure interest, something that you want to do that is practical, that will actually take your mind to that thing and away from your storms and your stresses, and enjoy being outdoors. Try some water sports or play team games with others. Have fun with other people. Avoid ultra-competitive sport. Why? Because ultra-competitive sporting is stress. It's good stress for Leonardo and Messi, because they get paid for it and paid lots of money. But for us, as a leisure thing, we don't want to be doing ultra-competitive things. We want to be doing fun, more fun type of sporting events and activities. And then number 10, we've got just 3 more slides and then we're going to finish, is we want to be happy. Practice being happy. I have a little slide that I share on another presentation on depression, where someone is holding, where 2 people are asking each other, and one person is holding a little jar, and the jar says happiness. And the person says, "Oh, where did you find that?" And this little person says, "Well, I made it myself. I created it myself." So happiness is a choice. It's an attitude of our mind. It's an attitude of what we choose to do and how we choose to live our lives. People can do things to us. Life can happen. People can take away certain things from us. People can step on our toes. But how we choose to be is up to us. I have another little cartoon of a little girl, I think it's from the 1950s, where she's holding on to happiness and saying, "I'm happy, don't ruin it." Right? Nobody actually ruins our happiness except we make that choice to allow them to do that. And I know this is challenging, and I'm being very sensitive when I'm talking about this, because I do know that a lot of us, our relationships can cause us to can create stress. Other people, often it's people rather than things, that cause us disharmony and stress. But how we choose after that thing has happened, what we choose to do is so important. And we can stay stuck in that event, in that storm, and blame and continue to hold on to the anger, to the dissatisfaction, and what this person's done and what this thing has done and who it's done. It's the government's fault, it's other people's fault. Or we can choose to let go, let God be part of that problem, that solution, find the best ways that we can manage as well ourselves, whether it's getting resources from other people, finding therapeutic relationships, doing things in our leisure time to help us to create the feel-good factor, and let it go and continue to be happy and choose to be happy. That is within our control, and it is within our power, and God will help us to be able to do that. So if we go on to the next slide, develop good friendships, keep good friends, make new ones. They're really helpful for the times when the storms come. People who have good relationships also make it through life storms better than those who are alone and don't have good relationships. Then the last slide, and we're going to end it here, is, if you go on to the last slide, don't be afraid to cry. I don't want to end on a sad note, but sometimes we do cry. Life storms will cause us to shed a tear or two or more. We have sadness or we have loss. It's always good to find an outlet for our emotions. I encourage people not to bottle things in, because we do need that. It's part of the healing process. It's part of what we need in order for us to recover and to get over certain issues in our lives. If you go on to the next slide, Shane, just to finish, actually, if you don't mind, and then we're not going to do this part. Yeah, so that's fine. If you end the presentation, please. And I'm just going to come back here. So we've shared a lot of things. We've shared a lot of how we can face life storms, the challenges that we're going to experience. And challenges, our storms can come in various ways and shapes and forms. It can be relationship issues, illness, a diagnosis that you were not expecting. And like we say, some storms are little, in my language, we call them, if anyone from Zimbabwe here, it's Vunguzane. It can be little Vunguzane that just comes and shakes your front yard and just passes by, and you don't need to stress about it. Or some storms can be big tornadoes and hurricanes that wreck everything and destroy the house, and you need to rebuild. You need to start all over again. But when we put our faith in God, when we calmly present everything to God, when we face what's going on and say, is this a little tornado? Is it a big one? What has caused it? And what's my part in this story? What's my part in this storm? One thing I always encourage people to remember is this: storms come when we're ready. Storms, never God will allow a storm into our lives before we are prepared. And I think it's an old Chinese proverb that says that when yes, we will. When the master arrives when the student is ready. Yes, I think that's that proverb. And I trust God that the storms are masters, storms are teachers, storms are there for a reason. And my faith and belief is this, and it hasn't always been like that. But my belief is that whatever storms, however their size, however their length, in terms of how long they're going to be around, we can still be calm and still be standing after the storm. And one thing we can be sure of is that God has prepared us for them in advance. We may not know it. God has put people around us, resources around us, or He has given us the internal resilience already through other storms that we've had in order to deal with whatever storm is coming. So trust God, trust the process, and know that the storm will not last. So may God bless you as we go through this. God says, when you go through the storm, I will be with you. May God be with you as you go through whatever storms are happening in your life right now.